Hi guys, I found these at Dollar General and wanted to turn them into something pretty. So let's get into it. I started out by making sure that it was cleaned off really good. Now, this is the first one that I did. I did a second one, and I'll show you that one in this video too to show you where I went wrong on this one. After I cleaned it off, I started putting a thin layer of resin all over the can. Now, this is a very thin layer, so I just started out putting a little bit on and spreading it around with my gloved hand. I was trying to make sure that I got a very good coverage over the whole thing without putting too much resin on it, making sure I got the handles and the neck of this thing. It's an odd shape, so you really have to kind of work with it to get it on all of the areas. So I rubbed it in, made sure that I thought I had really good coverage, got it all over it. I was not sure how this was going to turn out because I've never done anything like this one before, but I wanted to try it. Because this was the first one I've ever done like this, there are some mistakes that were made on this first one, but I wanted to include this video also so that you could see where I went wrong and how I fixed it. Okay, now that that first coat is on there, I changed out my messy glove to a cleaner one, and I'm going to start just dropping on some alcohol ink onto this and seeing what we can come up with. Basically, this is just like if you're doing a tumbler cup, but I'm doing it on a milk can vase, is what this is going to be. This one I kind of wanted to see what the colors were going to do, how they were going to react. So I'm just kind of doing like some blues and purples on this one just to see how it goes. Now I'm going to speed this next portion up just for the sake of not having an overly long video. I hate it when I'm sitting here for 10 minutes watching somebody drop colors on something. So I'm going to speed it up. This is sped up 5 times, so it's going to go a little bit faster. But you can see what I'm doing still. I'm just adding in all different colors because I really don't know what I'm doing at this point. I'm just putting on colors just to see what it's going to look like. I did this with the same color palette with like Christmas ornaments, and it turned out really beautiful. So I thought, why not try it on this milk can since it has a white backing already? So now that I've got my colors on there, now I am putting some heat on it, just trying to get those colors to start spreading out, but I can already see some issues. Those white circles are where the initial layer of resin did not stick correctly. And that is because I should have sanded this thing first. If I would have given it a light sanding, that first layer of resin would have stuck to it much better. And I did also have some trouble getting those colors to move. And I'm not sure if I didn't use enough resin to coat it or if it's because I didn't sand it. But either way, this one was not going how I wanted it. So I was trying to add some more color, just trying to see if I could get things to move around a little bit more on it. So I added more color, added more heat, started to get things to kind of move around a little bit more. And then what I did was I took some of my leftover resin and I mixed a little bit of an iridescent gold color into it. This is basically just to give it a little bit of shimmer. And I'm going to mix that in and pour that over my color. I also added a little bit of chameleon flake because I was trying to get a little bit of shine. Now I could have added some glitter at this point, but I didn't because I was already not sure how this was going to go, and I felt like it wasn't going to come out at all. So I added some more resin on the top. used my heat gun again to try to get to move those colors a little bit, but I can still see those circles. They're kind of like what you call fish eyes, where it did not have good coverage. And that was because I didn't sand it and I probably didn't use enough resin when I initially put it on. So at this point, I felt like I was starting to mess it up. So I sprayed it with a little bit of alcohol just to get those colors to try to blend and move together a little bit more. And then I'm going to set that aside. Now, after learning that, this was the second one I did. This one I lightly sanded the whole thing. I just used a nail file to go over all of it so that I could get into all of the nooks and crannies of this thing to make sure that I had a light sanding on the whole thing so that the resin had something better to grip to. This was a step that I did not do on the first one, and I do think it's a very important step to do. Once I got done with that, I made sure to clean it off really well. So I sprayed it with some alcohol and used a paper towel and wiped down the whole thing to get any dust and dirt all off of that. And you can see on that paper towel how much dirt actually came off of this thing. The other thing I didn't show you on the previous one is how I made it fit on my cup turner. These foam things that I use were too small and the bigger one was too big. So what I did was I took some bubble wrap and wrapped it around the foam insert, just making sure that it went all the way around. Then I used my tape and just put a little piece on it just to hold it at first, to hold that bubble wrap on. Then I took a larger piece and went all the way around it. Now, yes, I know you can buy adjustable ones, but I don't have any. So this is my way of making things fit when they don't. So by doing that, it made it just big enough that that fits right in there and holds tight so that when it's on the turner, it's not going to fall off. So now I've got it put on the turner and we're going to start with that light layer of resin all the way around it. Now on this part, I did speed up the video quite a bit just because I didn't want you guys to have to sit here. But this resin that I used, I colored it with a little bit of peach and white because I wanted that color on the background. So when you're doing your base layer, you can do any color you want, whether you want it white, blue, whatever. For this particular one, I wanted to do it more earth tones. So I started out with this peachy color that I added some white to tone it down a little bit. And I'm just doing the same thing. I'm going over the whole milk jug, making sure that everything is covered, the handles and everything, all the way around with my base layer before I start dropping on my ink. I'm also making sure that I have a little bit thicker resin on it than I had on the last one because I feel like that was part of the problem. That clear on white was hard to see how much resin and coverage I had. So this time I'm making sure that it's really good and covered. Now I'm going to start dropping on my colors. This is just a brown that I'm going to start with first. And I am going to speed this up again so that you're not here for 3 hours watching me drop ink onto this milk jug. Now I'm going to go in with some coffee color. It's a little bit darker than the brown. Like I said, this one I'm going for earth tones. And I can already tell that the inks are spreading better than they were before. And I'm not having any problems with the original base layer not sticking. I don't have any of the fish eyes going on like I did on the other one. So I can tell that that light sanding already has helped. So now I'm putting on some black in between here. trying to see, but anybody can starting to together, and it's those inks are moving around so much nicer on this one. And now I'm going to add in some midnight blue just to break up all of those earth tones just a little bit. That just gives it one little color that breaks that up. And the last color I'm going to add on here is a champagne metallic. When I opened the cap, there was some dried bits on the top, so I just kind of sprinkled that on before I started dropping the ink on there just to get it off there, and I thought that it would look good, and it actually did. It gave it kind of a sparkle to it in some areas. So I'm going to add that champagne metallic color in, not too much because the metallics do tend to take over, especially if they're an alloy. This one is more of a shimmer metallic, so it's not as apt to take over. And now I'm going to add a little bit of that resin with the iridescent color that I mixed up for the last one over the top before I start using my heat gun to spread the colors around. Again, that was a mistake that I made in the last one, was I tried to move the colors around before adding a little bit of resin on the top, so they did not want to move around. This one, when I added that heat to it, it really started moving around quickly instead of me having to hold heat on it for so long, which I really liked. Before, it just wasn't moving. This time, it is really moving on there. So all in all, this one I think came out better. I learned a lot from the first one, which is what we have to do, especially when we're trying a new project. We have to try things, we have to get it to move around and just see what happens. And that's why I love doing this type of video, because I'm trying it for you, showing my mistakes and learning from them with you. So this one is ready to spin. We're going to spin that overnight and come back for the final coat. Now we are on the next day, and this first coat is completely dry. I love how it turned out. I am just using Promise tabletop epoxy to do a final coat on this. This just seals everything in, makes it go really good. Now on the first coats, I used my Unicone Art Resin. I love that resin. Use it for everything except for a final coat. I like to use Promise Epoxy's tabletop because it gives it a very good thick coat on the outer side and coats everything very, very nicely. The Unicone resin is a thinner resin, so it doesn't coat as well when I'm doing something like this. You really have to know your resins and what they can do, what they do for you when you're using them. And I'm just going around this whole thing with just clear resin and making sure that it is completely covered. And then I'm going to put some heat on it to pop any bubbles and to make sure that I have a very good even coat on this, and to make sure I didn't miss any areas, because sometimes you don't see it when you're doing your final coat. So now this one is done, and I'm going to set this aside on my other turner just to turn overnight. Now, this is how the first one came out, and I'm not upset about it. I do think it's good. But what I'm doing here is I have that tabletop epoxy resin, and I'm going to split it in half and put a little bit of that iridescent shimmer in one cup, just so I can add a little bit more sparkle to this last layer. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with the clear and the shimmer. We're going to do both. So I'm going to start with the clear, put some of that on, rub it around, and then I will do the shimmer also. I hope you guys have liked this video. If you do, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps push my videos out there. In 2025, I have told myself I'm going to be way better about making these videos and getting them out to you. And I'm honestly thinking about doing a full series of dollar store finds and what we can do with them. Since epoxy resin is so expensive as it is, if we can find things that we can transform with it that are cheaper and make them into beautiful items, I think we should. So let me know down below if it's something that you would like to see more of, because I do have more ideas. So this, anyway, back to the project we're working on here, adding that shimmer in with the clear, I think really helped this one to really bring out those colors and to make it shine. And I'm just going to put a little bit of heat on this so that we can smooth it all out, make sure there aren't any bubbles in it, and make it beautiful. So at the end of this, I am going to show you what we did and what we came up with. This one's going to turn for overnight until we have the final product. So tell me, guys, which one do you like the best? I can't decide. There's the purple and blue, and then there's the earth tone ones. I think they both came up pretty good, but let me know which one you like the best. We'll see you next time.